Hello there. A few months ago, I made a video on how to pass the Japanese Exchange and Training Program interview, and this was from the perspective of someone who had taken the interview and failed. And I gave a kind of a brief rundown of what to expect during the interview day, the stages and so on. And today I'm going to do like a very similar video, but based on the, well, Eikaiwa, the Japanese or the English conversation school that you will find in Japan. Interview, what you can expect at that interview if you've never done it before. And this is from the point of view of someone who has taken many of these interviews and has passed nearly as many as he's failed. So, you know, I've got a bit more of a success rate in this one, so we'll see, right? But let's get started, right? So the first thing to think about with the Eikaiwa interviews is what type of Eikaiwa interview it is going to be. So Eikaiwa interviews are basically grouped into two, I would say. There's two main groups of them, right? There's the face-to-face and there's the online. I will talk about each one separately, have each one in a little section. And we're going to start with the face-to-face one, because I think the face-to-face one, it's actually, the interview process is a lot more fun, it's a lot more engaging. But we'll save the online one for later, okay? So the face-to-face interview can be kind of a little daunting, it can be a little tricky, because, well, it's more face-to-face. But the kind of the main thing that makes it more difficult is that it's the nature of the face-to-face itself. You won't be interviewed in your home city, most likely, unless you live in a very big city. The chances are, the odds are, that you will have to travel far to interview. I'll give you like my own personal example is that I lived in the UK. I lived specifically in Liverpool in the UK, so in the north of England. And when I went to interview, I interviewed face to face, I think 4 times. I passed 2 of them and failed 2 of them. And I had to go to London for all 4 of these occasions. I had to go from Liverpool to London, which is a distance of about 350 kilometers about. And by train it's about 2.5 hours. And of course, that's not including like the travel time within London itself. So it can be a long and arduous process to actually get there, right? So just something to think about. The face-to-face ones, if you live in a big city, it's going to be a bit more convenient. If you live outside of the big city, you're almost certainly going to have to travel to get there. So now that we talk about that, let's talk about the actual day itself. So the day itself can be split into 2 sections, more or less. 2 or maybe 3 sections, depending on which what the Eikaiwa company personally does or professionally does, or what the Eikaiwa company specifically does. So generally speaking, there's a morning session and there's an afternoon session, okay? And usually it's the case that you have to pass the morning session in order to progress to the afternoon session. So in the morning session, like you have a basic kind of group interview, okay? So if you've ever been to a group interview for like any kind of job, you're probably going to be aware of what the morning session is going to be like. Typically, you will start at something, as an example, okay? You start at 10, you have like an hour where the interviewer is just kind of like regurgitating information at you, telling you about the company, the ethos, what Japan is like, what living in Japan is like. Questions about like information about pensions and insurance and yada yada yada, right? It's all very dry, it's all very boring, but that's what the first hour is like. After that is normally kind of like when the interview proper begins. And the group interviews are usually like group tasks. Think of like group activities, group presentations in school. That should be your mindset when you go into this. You will be divided up into however big your group of interviewees are. You will be grinded up. You will be separated into groups and asked to kind of like do like a mini icebreaker amongst yourselves. Decide on a topic to present and then present it to the rest of the group. this is the interviewers. They want to see, how you operate in a group environment, but they also want to see kind of like what your personality is like. During this stage, what they're looking for is someone who is helping the team, someone who is like participating, but not someone who is dominating. There has to be like a kind of a balance that you need to achieve during this. Like any group interview, this is like good advice, right? You should be active participant, not passive, but you shouldn't be dominating. Try to find that middle ground. I personally kind of lean towards a bit more of the passive kind of view, passive perspective, but I've seen people in these interviews not make it to the second stage because they've either just been, complete wallflowers, where they've just been like in the corner, like not talking, like just, or they've been just yap, and complete on it, and then be told, thank you very much, but please go. So be careful with this. You don't want to dominate, you don't want to be passive, you want to be in the middle for this stage, right? After the presentation is normally kind of like you decide on the topic, but they kind of like advise that you stick to the kind of like safe topics, no politics or anything like that, just movies, games, and yada, right? So you have this interview, and then usually after the group presentation, there'll be like a small break, and then you'll come back and you'll have like a kind of a group, like all the people together, kind of like a group exercise where you have to kind of like talk about like a grammar point, or talk about like a kind of a teaching thing or something along those lines. And these can be a little bit nerve-wracking, because it's kind of you imagine in your head like a grammar point or such, and then it gets to the next person and like they say your grammar point. This actually happened to me on like one occasion. I was thinking, okay, I'll talk about this tense, I'll talk about like the perfect progressive tense or something, right? And like I'm watching, like I was like in the middle of like the table, and it's like this person, and literally the person like on my right, the one before me, talked about the progressive, and I was just like, no, I've been planning this. And it was not, I had to very quickly on the fly imagine something else. So this is actually, like at the time I thought it was like really bad, really annoying, but actually it was really good, because it taught me, like, oh, I need to be adaptable, I need to be quick on my feet. So yeah, just bear that in mind. You have to, a lot of these places will have this kind of like talk about English in the like the group setting, where you have to like kind of teach everyone, or talk about it to everyone in that sense, yeah. So yeah, that's basically the morning session. So what happens after that is, after you've had like the group presentation, and after you've had like the group teaching, is normally there will be like a lunch break, okay? And that is kind of like the end of the first session. If you pass this first session and after the lunch break, you will continue on to the second session. So the way they normally do this is that you'll go out for lunch, and you will come back, after lunch, and then you will be told to split into two groups. Okay, you'll be told to split into, please, this person follow me into room 1, this person follow me into room 2, and they kind of do this like group by group. And the idea behind this is they don't want people to know like who's passed and who's failed kind of thing. So just be aware of that. It's like if like me, when I was doing like these interviews, I would be going, who did I think was really good in like the teaching section? Who did I think was really good in the presentation section? And am I in their group, or am I in the loser group? And sometimes it's surprising. Like on the one occasion where I got into like where I passed the interview, I thought, oh no, I'm in this group. This group was terrible. Like these people were awful. And then I get into like the room and say, congratulations. And I was like, oh wow, okay. On another occasion, I've got into the room where I thought, like, okay, no, this person was great. He's like really eloquent, really erudite. This person was also great, like really concise descriptions and such. And then I got into the group and said, oh, sorry, but today you have not been successful. Thank you very much for attending. And so, yeah, there's no way to kind of know, I guess, until you're actually in the room itself. But that's the end of the kind of part one. We'll talk about the part two, the afternoon session, next. Sorry if the angle's changed a bit, my camera died, I had to change the battery. Right, so we finished on the morning session, and after you return from lunch, what happens next is that the interviewers will gather you into groups, and they'll gather you all together, and they'll read like a list of names and divide you into groups. So like they'll say, okay, so group 1, please follow me. Group 2, please follow me to this room, to this room, to this room, right? And it depends on like how many people there are in the in the interview itself. This can be like many groups, but regardless, what they're doing is they are dividing you into groups of people who have passed the morning session and people who have failed at the morning session. I don't know what happens at the, because not to brag or anything, I don't know what happens at the in the failing room, because I've never failed the morning session. I've only ever failed the afternoon session, and even then only 50% of the time. So I don't know what happens in the morning session, but I imagine it's very similar to the afternoon session. They just thank you for coming, but unfortunately at this time you've not been successful, and then off you go. So the afternoon session is a lot more teaching focused. So normally, again, it kind of depends on what the Eikaiwa main business focus is, because that's what Eikaiwas are. They are businesses, and if they are more focused on teaching children, then it's going to be a lot more child focused. If they're focused on teaching adults and children, then it's going to be more like 50-50. And there are a few Eikaiwas that are specifically focused only on adults, but I've never personally interviewed for one of those places, and I imagine that they will be entirely focused on adult interviews. But my advice for this is that most of the Eikaiwas, when they get you to the afternoon session, they are looking for what you kind of know about teaching. So they might say, okay, please use this teaching technique, but more often than not, what they're doing is they want to see how you teach, what ideas you have for teaching. So my advice would be, if you pass on, that's a really bad way to phrase that. If you pass through to the afternoon session, and so you pass the morning session, my advice would be to kind of think about, beforehand obviously, think about what you would do if you were teaching a group of, say, kindergarten students, that is like students who are about the age of like 4, 5 or 6. A lot of the places want you to kind of focus on like teaching kids, because that's where the money is. So a lot of these places will kind of, and especially like kinder schools, kinder classes, because it's the longest investment, if that makes sense. You know, if you get them like if you get the kid in a kindergarten class, they tend to stick the whole way through to junior high. So yeah, it's a business. It's like you can't get away from it, right? So focus on kind of like how you would teach like a kindergarten student, how you would teach a 4 or 5-year-old English. Think of like simple games, kind of like alphabet tag, or something like a guessing numbers game or something along those lines. Keep it simple. Remember, it's supposed to be like a non-verbal kind of game. You're not supposed to like give instructions. It's supposed to be like showing, and so that the student can like do it and then repeat the words as such, yeah? So think about that. What game would you play if you were teaching a kid? My personal one that I would like recommend you do would be something like a running game. So like the run and touch game. So you have like the A and apple, and you have like so you draw like on a piece of paper like an apple, on a piece of paper you draw like an A, and you have the students and like you're like B basketball, C cat, and so on, right? And then you have the student like run from place to place and like go A, and so run over to A, boom, A, says apple, and then run over to the apple and touch, yeah? Think about games that you would play with very small children who maybe don't understand English at all, and so you can't describe it to them, you have to show them what to do, right? So That's my first piece of advice for the afternoon session. Generally speaking, if it's a kid-focused Eikaiwa, then you will do 2 of these. Usually one will be for kinder classes, and then one will be for kind of like junior high school or high school students, and more likely going to be like towards like junior high school students, a bit more advanced. And so you kind of have to think of a different game for them as well. They might have a basic understanding of English at this point, maybe not. So again, it has to be kind of very easy to understand games, like revealing games, or like pick a number game or something along those lines. Something that is easy to show without describing how to do it. Yeah, that's my advice for that. If the Eikaiwa is kind of 50-50 or focused also on adults, there will be also an adult teaching section. Usually, but not always, this will be kind of two lessons that you have to teach, or 2 like demo lessons that you have to teach. They tend to split them up into like beginner and advanced students. So you have like a student who, like, this will be like the interviewer pretending to be a student, and he or she will pretend to be kind of a low-level student, and then later on will pretend to be a more advanced student. So again, you kind of have to think about like how you would teach a lesson point. Normally for these, you get given a kind of a range of grammar points. So could be something like present perfect progressive, which I mentioned before. It could be something like the simple past, or likes or dislikes. It could be about hobbies. Whatever it is, you get like a kind of a choice, a small choice, and then you have to teach that lesson. Like the kind of, they normally want you to follow kind of like their lesson structure that they'll have talked about like in the information at the start of the day, just to see like what you've retained in a sense. But teach it how you would teach it, and yeah, that's the face-to-face one. So we talked like, oh, that took a long while. So next we're going to talk about the online one, and the online one is a lot more simple. But yeah, let's get started. So the online one is, you don't have to travel for the online one, obviously, because it's online, which is a huge time saver and a huge money saver. So I kind of prefer the online ones for that reason. The face-to-face ones are a lot more fun, but the online ones are a lot more cost-effective and time-effective. So typically speaking, for the online lessons, for the online interviews, you will have 2 interviews, normally one pre-interview and then one actual interview, which will include like a demonstration, a lesson demonstration or teaching demonstration. So starting with the pre-interview, okay, oh, just a little note about this actually, the pre-interview and the interview, or the pre-interview and the demo lesson, are normally quite some time apart. Typically speaking, in my experience, they tend to be like at least 1 week apart. But anyway, so in the pre-interview, it is very straightforward. It is, if you've ever done a job interview in the past, if you've ever done any kind of like university interview in the past, you almost certainly know what to expect. They're going to be asking you about, you know, why are you interested in like going to Japan? Why do you want this job? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so on. It's like the general interview spiel, you know, it's like just whatever. At this point, I don't think you can actually fail at this point. Not unless you're like egregiously awful, you know, not unless like there's like something completely just kind of destructively wrong with you in a sense. And you know, someone out there's like watching this video going, I failed that. I don't know, which I apologize for. But yeah, the pre-interview, it doesn't really matter. It's not, they say it's not really graded, and I kind of believe them on that, because it's just kind of like the, it's an information session, it's not really thing. The week after, normally they will have like a kind of, this is like where they have the actual interview, and usually they will ask you questions based on like your answers from the previous week, as well as like what was in your application form. So it'll be a bit more like in depth and detail. So like, for example, you said like, oh, so last week you said you were interested in Japan because of the culture, right? So please tell me what you know about Japanese culture, and then you gotta talk to them about that as such. So be aware of that. Don't just forget like your answers in a sense. Don't just kind of waffle or invent things on the spot. Give considered answers in the pre-interview because they will come up later in the actual interview. So yeah. Pre-interview also usually includes again like an information presentation. This is like kind of the starting point. I should have really started with this. And again, it's just the interviewer will talk about the company, like what they expect, their standards, their ethos, what it's like to live in Japan and such. And then yeah, so that's like the pre-interview. And then in the interview itself, like I say, you have like kind of questions based on your answers in the pre-interview. And also you will be giving a teaching demonstration. This could be 1 or 2 teaching demonstrations. Again, if it's a company that is focused on teaching children, you will be primarily giving a demonstration that should be aimed towards teaching children, right? So usually they give you, after the pre-interview, they will give you a kind of if you have like successfully passed the pre-interview, they will give you a topic or a grammar point or something through which to teach. Usually is the case they do this. I can't think of any, off the top of my head, I can't remember any Eikaiwas that did not do this. So for example, they might say like, okay, so today we're going to be talking like, for a kids lesson, we're going to be talking about this simple past, okay? So last weekend I did this, okay? So yeah, you have to kind of like imagine like you have to prepare a lesson, a demonstration lesson for that topic. Normally the demonstration lessons are any length actually. I've had demonstration lessons that have been 5 minutes. I've had demonstration lessons that have been like basically a full lesson, like 30-40 minutes. So just be aware it can be any length. I would recommend preparing a full lesson. Find out how long the lessons are for the Eikaiwa that you're applying for and plan a full lesson for that. You are applying to an Eikaiwa that is more kind of like a 50-50, so like some kids, some adults, then you will also have an adult lesson. And the adult lesson, they tend to role play, the interviewer tends to role play as a low level English speaker who has maybe 1 or 2 words of vocabulary, but not too much. So like basic phrases, yeah. They might be able to say hello, my name is and such, but nothing more than that. And you need to teach them like English lesson. And usually this will be like a lesson that they kind of provide for you in a sense, or like a topic that they can provide for you. Some schools will have you do like the certain sections of it, so they might have like kind of they might have the section on production, for example, or they might have the section on kind of like a keys off, but anyway, it's been a long time since I've thought about those. And then after you've done that is the end. That's the end of the interview. The online interviews are a lot more straightforward. They're a lot less complex. There's no group stage in the at least I've never had a online group interview with an Eikaiwa. I've heard of other people who have had this group interview online, and but at this time it was during COVID, so it might have been for coronavirus specifically, I don't know, but I've not heard of it since, so maybe that's the case now. If it's an online lesson, it's going to be mostly just kind of man-to-man in a sense. It's just going to be one-on-one. But that's the online lessons. That's the end of today's video. I really hope that this video helped you with your Eikaiwa preparation. Like I say, we're only a couple of weeks out from hearing back for the JET results, so fingers crossed for you guys. It's like the JET program obviously is like the one that you want to prepare for, the one that you want to be accepted onto. But my advice is that I think I said this at the start, but if you are thinking about Japan, if you really want to come to Japan, I would recommend applying for an Eikaiwa position or an ALT position today, pretty much. The reason for this is kind of simple. It's that, like, if you are waiting for the jet results, which are going to be in like 2 or 3 weeks, so are thousands upon thousands of other people. Yeah, and if you are dead set on coming to Japan and you're waiting for the jet results, you're pinning your hopes on the jet results, and it's not successful, then you will be applying to an Eikaiwa or to an ALT position at the same time as thousands of other people. You know, beat the crowds, apply now. Just because you applied doesn't mean that you are, you know, dedicated to an Eikaiwa position. You know, it's just kind of get the ball moving, get the ball rolling, and, you know, get ahead of the crowds essentially. But thank you very much for watching today's video. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that usual stuff, and I hope to see you again in the future. See you, bye bye.